Welcome to another episode of The Financially Free Investor, where you will learn information and strategies on how to become financially independent by investing in real estate, something that is not taught openly in our society today. Financial freedom matters so you can live a bigger life, retire early, and do what matters most to you. Get ready to hear tried and true methods to becoming financially free with your host, Jordy Clark.
All right, everyone, welcome into another episode of The Financially Free Investor. So today I'm recording this a day before it's supposed to release. So literally this is about as fresh as it gets. If you follow me on social media, you know that I was just in Arizona for a couple of days. I actually went to a Buffini event. If you don't know who Brian Buffini is, I'll let you go ahead and Google him. But basically he trains real estate agents. He's got a huge coaching company. He's phenomenal. So he's been in the industry for 35 years. He's been coaching real estate agents. He was a top producer, everything you can imagine. So with that being said, I went to this team leader conference, and the team leader conference was about 600 of us in the room. And I'm going to say us because it was about 600 of the top real estate teams that are in his program, and he coaches tens of thousands of real estate agents across the nation. And typically, the average real estate agent makes about $35,000 a year. The average full-time real estate agent makes $35,000 a year. Let that sink in. And people think you get into real estate for the money. The reality is 80% of agents are average, and they make $36,000 a year before expenses, by the way. So really they're making like 15, 16 bucks an hour. The average agent in there was well north of 12 times the average real estate agent just nationwide. So top producers in their own rights, in their own, markets. And I met people from Maryland and California and Washington and Florida and Canada and just all over the North America. But here's the thing. I wanted to deliver and compress 2 days of information, phenomenal information, into a 30-minute podcast for you. And most of you are not real estate agents. Some of you are. Most of you are interested in investing. And I personally have tons of questions. What's going on in the market? Where is the market going? What does my crystal ball say the market's going to do? And, there's conflicting trade winds everywhere. So I just wanted to kind of condense and compress the highlights of what everyone talked about there, what the speakers talked about, because I think, A, it's pertinent for people who are not real estate agents, and B, it's pertinent for people who are real estate agents, because we all have to deal with this thing called real estate. And real estate, 16% of the GDP of the United States, so the gross domestic product, or what we produce as a nation, the income, is in real estate. So it could be just any sort of real estate, equity growth, title companies, mortgage companies, blah, blah, blah. There's so many things that real estate affects, construction, and all of it. Okay. So, this was primarily for team leaders. So I'm going to kind of strip out a lot of that data because most of you don't run a real estate team like I do. However, they talked a lot about the industry. So here we go. 70% of real estate agents, 70% have no idea what a normal real estate market is like. Let that sink in. So 70% of the real estate agents out there have never worked in a market where it takes 3 or 4 months to sell a house. Most of them are new because real estate has a very high attrition rate. People get in thinking they can make a ton of money, and then they're average and they make $35,000 a year, which is totally fine. But then they're like, I'm not making any money. I can go make this kind of money somewhere else, and I don't really love the business, and it's hard, and blah, 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 right? But that just goes to show you that who you hire when you have real estate needs matters, because 70% of the agents have no clue what is going on. 80% of lenders have never worked in a market where there is zero refi business. And they put this slide up. I thought it was super interesting. You know, everyone knows what happened when COVID hit. Okay. February of 2020, our interest rates were hovering around 3.5%. COVID hit, everyone's out of work, everything shut down. And then the Federal Reserve just started printing money. The government started giving it away. And with that, in June of 2021, the average interest rate dipped to 2.93. And so many people refinanced. I remember talking to lenders in 2021, and they were making so much money because they were refinancing so many people from 3.5 to 2.93. Well, everyone got drunk on that cheap money. Okay, 2.93% was the average interest rate in June of 2021. And I remember because I refinanced a couple of my single families, and I'm at like 3.125. And I don't know that I'm ever going to give that loan up, especially when inflation right now is at like 10%, right? It's probably a little bit higher because another thing that was talked about was a lot of the metrics that they use to determine what inflation is, they've changed. They've stripped out some. They're not counting some things. Like it's changing to make it look better because they're politicians on both sides. I don't care, you know, if you're on one side or the other or agnostic or whatever it is, they both do it. They spin things to make it seem like, you know, the other side's the devil or whatever. And anyways, the point I'm getting to is September of 2022, the average interest rate 5.89%. So you went from 3.5 to 2.93 to 5.89, all within a 2-year period. Okay, what a roller coaster. And there's a lot of people who, you know, you for the past 3 or 4 years, we heard shortage of inventory. There's a shortage of housing. You know, there's a housing shortage. And, you know, you kind of layer that on everything that's going on in our nation. We've got, you know, families continuing to develop, people get married and then form a household, and, you know, people migrate in because America is the land of opportunity, whether it's legal or illegal, doesn't matter. But, you know, we've got people migrating here by the thousands, which I'm totally happy for them. It just goes to the point of, you know, where are they going to live? How are they going to live? And here in Salt Lake, we just have a shortage of housing as it is because we have geographic barriers. Okay. So everyone has seen prices drop, you know, but here's the thing that we talked about there. And Brian even said it. He said, what we've seen is just a haircut off of stupid prices. Stuff that's priced at $800,000 that never should have had any business being priced at $800,000, you know, is now down at 750 or 725. And there's all these people that read an article and take it out of context. And what I'm trying to do here is frame and give as much context as possible so that you've got the data so that you can make the most informed decisions for yourself, right? And I'm speaking a little fast because I'm just kind of juiced up and jazzed about this, which is why I wanted to jump in and record it. Because there's a lot of good out there, and what we focus on expands. And if we focus on the negative, and that's what we're going to get in life. And if we focus on the opportunity, that's what we're going to get in life. So I want you guys to focus on the opportunity. So what we're seeing, you know, we don't know if it's really a bear market or not. The interesting thing is we are a bear market in volume because all of a sudden 80% of the buyers just stopped buying. However, that doesn't mean prices are going to drop exponentially like they did in 2009 because of the interest rate fact that I just told you. So many people are sitting on 3-4% interest rates, even 5% interest rates, where the prevailing interest rate, I just got quoted 6.5 on an investment property. So, you know, if I'm sitting at 5% interest rate, or heck, even 2.93%, what are the odds that I'm going to go, hey, you know what? I'm going to sell my house and go and buy the same size house and double my mortgage payment? Not going to happen, right? So this lack of inventory that we're having, we're not going to have a surplus of inventory come on like we did in 2008. And ultimately that, amongst a bunch of other stuff that isn't happening now, happened. And there was so much inventory that it pushed prices down, and so much of it was bank owned. So because banks had no clue what to do with all of these houses, right? However, I will say I wouldn't be surprised if we see a decline in house prices by 5 to 10% over the next 12 months, depending on where interest rates go. That doesn't mean wait to buy. If you find something that makes sense now to buy, I would buy it, because we don't know where interest rates are going to be in a year. And that gets to the next point that Brian made. And holy cow, I'm still only on the first page and I'm 10 minutes into this podcast. So the Fed is they've already stated it. They are going to flip the market. What does that mean? That means we've currently got 3% unemployment. Their target unemployment rate is 6.6%. So they will continue to raise interest rates until unemployment hits 6.6%. Okay, so that's the metric to watch. And up until then, like, rates are only going up from here. But what's going to happen is, it's not a perfectly linear growth. There's ebbs and flows to the market. So one week, say it'll go to 6.75, and then the next week it'll drop down to 5.8. And really the big thing Brian talked about is the people who have to buy are going to wait, and they're going to time the interest rates, or they're going to try to time the interest rates. So, when they see rates dip, they're going to go in and buy, and there's going to be a rush in to buy, and then rates are going to come back up because they naturally just ebb and flow. And we're not talking about like going from 6% to 3%. I don't know that we'll ever see 3% interest rates ever again. But what they did say was you're going to have a 75 basis or 0.75% swing in interest rates, so call it 6% to 5.25, and everyone's going to rush in at 5.25 or whatever that lower rate is, and then it'll go back up and no one's going to buy. Okay, so the other thing he said is, look, this is all scary, and I totally agree with this next statement. This is all scary. The Fed's doing this, White House is doing this, everyone's doing this, politics are doing this. And he said, look, the only thing you need to focus on, and I'm going to extend this to you guys because you're listening and you're investing in yourself and your future and your financial freedom and your time freedom, is how can you take care of yourself, your family, and anyone that depends on you. So if you run a team, if you're in a team, everyone in life is just codependent in one way, shape, or form with another person. So we can't deal with what the Federal Reserve does. We can't deal with policies that politicians put in place. We can't deal with what banks do. We have zero control over all of this. So stop flipping worrying about it. Okay. And that's not to say don't stay educated, but don't let it keep you up at night, because they're going to do what they're going to do. And all you can do is all you can control. Okay. So control what you can control, and forget about everything else, meaning like don't stress over it, right? The next point that I really wanted to make is everyone is going back to the fundamentals of investing, meaning people are no longer buying based on appreciation in both flips and rentals. People are now buying based on cash flow, based on debt pay down, based on the fact that even at 6% interest rates, you're still lower than inflation. So if you're borrowing at 6% and inflation is at 10%, no matter what prices do over the next 12 to 18 months, while it's kind of wonky, call it a 10-year period. Let's say we have a decade of inflation at 7% and you're borrowing at 6%. Well, you're still borrowing for cheaper than what tomorrow's dollars are going to be worth, if that makes sense. So rent is going to be the number one inflation indicator for the next year, 5 years. And as Brian said that, he said, if any of you, and again, he's talking to a room full of real estate agents, he said, if any of you know of an apartment building, please let me know because I am buying apartments. What's that to say? That's to say that the guy that owns the largest independent agnostic coaching company for real estate agents, whose net worth is well north of $100 million, is buying real estate. And then he told us, buy real estate and wait, because your tenants are going to pay it down. Tomorrow's dollars are going to be cheaper. You're going to own an asset instead of owning a liability. Okay. So, first page is done. I'm going to try to make it through all of this. There's 60 pages of notes that I took. So I'm not going to get it all, but it is what it is. You know, one big thing he extended is, and I think this is true. He was again talking to realtors and their teams, but I think this is true in our life. He said, avoid the H. And everyone is like, what the crap are you talking about? And he's like, you want to avoid the H. And we're like, yeah, Brian, we heard you, but we have zero clue what you're talking about. So he said, the difference between winners and whiners is an H. You want to avoid the H. So in your life, avoid the H. You want winners around you. You don't want whiners around you, because who you are around is who you become. And if you're around whiners, guess what you become? If you're around winners, guess what you become? Okay. With that being said, I'm actually going to skip the next few. It just talked about different models of real estate teams. Yeah, here we go. So talking about, and this applies towards most people, I think. Everyone has gotten sloppy in the real estate industry in the last 2 years. And he said, it's not your fault, it's the market's fault, because everything was going so lightning fast that you couldn't help but get sloppy. And the problem is, tons of new agents joined, tons of new investors rushed into the market because they saw things going up by $100,000 a year, a month, a day, who knows. But everyone rushed in and they did not focus on the fundamentals. And when you don't focus on the fundamentals, you get sloppy. So the two quotes I'm going to talk to you guys about, and then I'm going to, obviously most of you aren't real estate agents, but if you are, this applies to lead generation. If you're not, it can apply to a lot of areas in your life. Okay. So one is, you can't be a master and not maintain. Okay. So you can't be physically fit and not maintain. You can't be financially fit and not maintain. You got to pay attention to the little things in life, because that's the devils are in the details, guys. So the next thing is, take an audit of where you spend your time, energy, and money. Okay, those three things. Where are you spending your time, energy, and money? And when you focus on those three things, that's going to tell you where you're going to get to. Okay, so weed the garden, guys. Go through your life right now. This is a great opportunity. The next 90 days will kind of be a great reset for us all to be able to be, just more strategic on what we spend our dollars on, whether that's marketing dollars, whether that's entertainment dollars, whatever. Just refine your budgets, and weed the garden, because we've all gotten sloppy. Weeds have grown in all of our gardens, in every area of our life, probably, because it's just been so hectic. And if you fertilize weeds, guess what you get? You get weeds. So you got to pick the weeds out before you fertilize the garden. So the next thing that he kind of talked about, ask people what your brand is. He challenged us to go to some of our really good clients and ask what our brand is. So, I mean, if you're listening to this and you've listened to it, I would love for you to message me on Instagram or email me or do whatever. But let me know what you think my brand is, because I'd be totally interested to learn what your opinion is. In the afternoon, after a phenomenal lunch, they talked about the Titanic. Okay. And a lot of us know the story of the Titanic. What we don't know is the captain of the ship was coined the millionaire's captain. So if you were a millionaire in the day and age of the Titanic and you were crossing the Atlantic Ocean, you were going with the captain. I forget what his name is, but whatever captain was the captain of the Titanic. And because he would get you there safely, and he committed that he wanted to break basically the world record of crossing the Atlantic Ocean with the Titanic. And the Titanic was built for it, and it was an unsinkable ship, and we know all of this, right? Here's what we don't know. We don't know that the night the Titanic hit an iceberg, the conditions were amazing. The ocean was flat, which is a rare occurrence. And they called it some sort of a fog, but when the ocean is flat and there's no moon, it's tough to see anything, but the conditions are good. People aren't bouncing all over the place because of the waves. The conditions are good, and good conditions sometimes can be dangerous. And I'm going to extend that out into every area of our life. Good conditions in your marriage can be dangerous. Good conditions in your finances can be dangerous. Good conditions in business can be dangerous, whatever it is, because we get complacent. We don't focus on the fundamentals because everything is good right now. Okay. When seas are choppy, man, we're doing the fundamentals. When we are in a tough financial spot, we are watching every single dollar we spend. When we're in a tough part of our marriage, we are over communicating. We are working day in, day out, and having conversations on improving our marriage. We're listening to books. We're doing whatever. Okay. But when it's good, we're sloppy. A lack of clarity can be deadly. So they were talking about this mist, this fog, where if you get these completely flat seas, it's hard to see because you can't differentiate the difference between the water and the night sky, right? And the guy that was on the lookout, the guy that he replaced in whatever port they stopped at, forgot to give him the key to the binoculars, and the binoculars had a case. And so anyways, he couldn't get binoculars out, and he's supposed to be up there, looking with his binoculars for danger. Well, he couldn't, and he was too embarrassed to go to the captain's lounge and ask them for binoculars because he didn't want to get in trouble. So no binoculars. It was phenomenal conditions as far as the seas go, but very, very dangerous conditions as far as hitting an iceberg, right? And we all know what happened. And they actually hit the iceberg, and 45 minutes after, so it took them 45 minutes to realize the Titanic was sinking because it's such a big ship, just was taking a while. And I was blown away because the only thing I know about the Titanic is, like, I've watched the movie 3 times, right? And man, that ship sinks in like 10 minutes on the movie. So, they instantly know they're sinking in the movie. But again, they're collapsing it into 2 hours, or 3 hours or whatever it was. But just goes to show, like, sometimes we hit icebergs and don't realize we've hit icebergs. And that's certainly happened to me in my life before. So you've got to be clear on where you're going. Progress and direction are not the same thing. Okay. You can be progressing, but you can be going in the wrong direction, and it's just not what you want. I'm going to throw this out there because I know there's some leaders that listen to the podcast. He put, a lot of this was training you how to be a better leader, which I'm a terrible leader. So that's part of the reason I went. 4 questions to ask yourself about becoming a better leader. So what do they need to know? They, meaning your team. Why do they need to know it? What do they need to do? And why do they need to do it? And if you don't know the answer to those 4 questions, you better figure it out, because how can you convey where the ship is going to your team if you don't even know? Okay. And get ready, prepare your ship for rough seas ahead. Unemployment rate, just to go back to that, we're currently sitting about 3%, and the Fed's target is 6.6%. We've already seen it a lot with real estate. Real estate's the first one in this recession due to mortgages. Mortgage companies have let go a ton of staff. very talented people, but there's no refi business. So they're down 60, 70%. It's a tough business to be in. So get ready. Your business might have to lay people off. The business you work for might be laying people off. Get ready. Get your house in order. Have some emergency funds set aside. I personally like some food storage, some water storage, because natural disasters, you lose your job, who knows? And just having that makes your money go further because you don't have to buy groceries. So just get ready. Okay. I'm going to gloss over the next part. Except for this, I thought that was really interesting. Feelings without fact create fiction. So a lot of times we create our own story, right? This one's a good one. We had Patrick Lencioni, the author of The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, come and talk to us. And I want to be sensitive to your guys' time. We're 25 minutes in at this point, and I'm at page 38, so I'm halfway through. Go read the book. He's a phenomenal speaker, author. He's ADHD to the max, so I really resonated with him. He was picking people out that were going to the bathroom or coming in late and making fun of them, and everyone was laughing. And phenomenal speaker. He was having a great time. We were having a great time. Here's a couple of things we got. This is the time to make your business even better. So now's the time to invest more in yourself, employees, business, etc. Less focused on real estate investments, stock market investments. Focus on yourself. Focus on the 6 inches of real estate between your ears. Focus on getting around the right people. Focus on making yourself a better human being in whatever area you need improvement in. Is that your morning routine? Is that your spiritual well-being? Is that your well-being with your spouse? Is that your well-being with your kids? Is that just you having time for yourself? Is that you taking time off for yourself, taking the vacation that you need to not get burnt out? Okay. So last thing is, we're all in teams, most of us in work, life, whatever. If your boat is sinking, and I don't know that they planned on the whole Titanic thing. Maybe they had. But if you're sitting in a boat and, everyone's trying to bail out water, you've got one person in the boat that's not bailing out water going, well, my part of the boat's not sinking. Not a good recipe, right? So if everyone's not bought in and ready to move forward, at least, with the same vision and beliefs, then you might have a problem. So, he said, when things get good, we all drift away from things. And we should establish our core values. Okay. To be good, you have to hold people accountable to the values that you've set. To be a great leader, you have to allow the people you lead to hold you accountable to the values you have set. Let that sink in for a second. To be a good leader, you have to hold people accountable to the values you've set. To be a great leader, you get to allow the people you lead to hold you accountable to the values you have set. If you're a leader, my question to you is, are you doing that? I certainly could use more work on that. I'm going to try better. Last thing I'm going to say is, just because we're going into a recession, and this was hit on a couple of different times, but just because the United States is going into a recession does not mean that your personal life has to go into a recession. The biggest businesses, the biggest fortunes sometimes are built in recessions. I posted this on my social media because I loved it so much. He put it up there. It's a quote from John F. Kennedy. When written in Chinese, the word crisis is composed of 2 characters. One represents danger, and the other represents opportunity. So this is the challenge I have for you in this next recession. Who knows how bad it's going to be? Who knows how shallow it's going to be? Who knows anything about the future? But here's my challenge to you as a listener of the Financially Free Investor podcast. 1, I would appreciate you referring my podcast to somebody who needs it. Somebody needs to hear this message. And if you're listening to this, you know somebody that could benefit from this message right here, wherever they're at in life. Please share it with them. And here's the challenge. And I'm extending the challenge to you because you've shown up. You've now listened to me ramble for 29 minutes on my podcast about this Buffini Team Leader Conference. You need to grow through this recession. And I'm going to leave it there. With that being said, guys, I hope that this helps you in whatever area of your life that you are needing direction, that you're needing clarity, that you're needing next steps on. And please take action. Figure out what you can do to improve today, because 1 degree of improvement today can put you on a whole different life trajectory. Ask me how I know. So grow through this recession. Just because the United States is in a mild recession, major recession, depression, whatever, doesn't mean that you have to be. And just because everyone else is a victim doesn't mean that you have to be a victim. So with that being said, guys, thank you for tuning in to the Financially Free Investor. My hope is that each and every one of you gets better in life, better as a human, better with your finances, better with your relationship with your spouse, your kids, your brother, your sister, your mother, your dad, anyone in life. And my goal is to bring you all of the tips, tricks, everything that I've done in my life to improve. I'm certainly not perfect, yet we live a pretty good life. So with that being said, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for listening to me for 32 minutes. I appreciate each and every one of those 32 minutes of each and every one of your guys' life. I don't take it lightly that so many people reach out to me and say, hey, your podcast is having a great impact on me. I want to be better. I want to get better content. We've got some great episodes coming up. And my whole goal is to help you get to where I'm at as I'm on this growth trajectory, because no one ever does this alone. I certainly didn't do it alone. The people in front of me didn't certainly do it alone. And you don't have to do it alone. So guys, on your march to $1 million and beyond, thank you for joining me. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Financially Free Investor. If you found value in this episode or know someone who would find value in this information, please share with them, subscribe, and send us a review.